Greetings, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we have a lot of things to paint.
We have a problem that we need to take care of.
We are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our channel where we cover everything Dungeons & Dragons, including talking a lot about miniatures and painting them recently.
We're going to be taking a look at a certain product that Monty and I have actually both been buying for years and using at our game tables, and it's the Terrain Crates by Mantic Games.
I ran into these several years ago when they ran their first Kickstarter, and we've actually been using the terrain from Mantic Games, Terrain Crates, in our Dungeons of Drakkenheim live streams for a really long time. We started to get a lot of questions about people asking, where did we get that weird looking piece or that specific thing from some of the screenshots that we took and our battle cams. And then Mantic Games reached out to us and asked us if we wanted more terrain.
So here we are with a stack of terrain, both ones that Monty and I have bought ourselves and also the amount that the Mantic Games has actually sent us. And they did not pay for a review, but we are going to be talking about their product and what we think of it.
Yeah, in a bit of full disclosure, we have purchased many of these sets ourselves, some in the past, some recently, and Mantic Games did send us a care package with some of their most recent terrain crates and their new Dungeon Masters kit as well. But we have been collecting these and painting these up for quite some time now, and we were not compensated beyond Mantic Games sending us a couple extra copies of these for the purposes of making this review, although we've been using them for so long that we really didn't need the extras. But thank you, Mantic Games, for sending us more. I don't know when we're going to have all this stuff painted, but let's dive in. If you haven't seen these before, terrain crates are small to medium to large boxes of fantasy and role-playing game themed terrain pieces. They range in price from about $20 all the way up to $100 Canadian. So you can do the math in US. There's the smaller boxes that are usually around $20, and then those big boxes that you saw before. There's ones that are $50. There's ones that are $100. So the price of them kind of ranges, and you usually get anywhere from about 22, there's some ones that are a bit smaller than this, but they have bigger pieces in them, to about 50 or 60 themed terrain pieces. Everything from your classic tavern to a wizardly library to a campsite, and some really, really cool stuff, like the staples of dungeon dressing.
Mantic Games is one of the few companies that is actually making a product like this. And if we open it up, they're actually really awesome and sturdy little terrain pieces that come in a brown plastic. So you do have to paint them yourself. They actually are quite passable if you decide that you don't need to paint them. A lot of the sets come with wooden pieces anyway, but they do look really nice with a bit of paint added to them. When you do decide to paint these up, they actually paint up really fast. You can throw on a simple base paint layer and then a dry brush, and you're pretty much good to go. You can finish one of these in probably 2 to 3 minutes. The problem is that you're going to end up with hundreds of these, so you're still going to spend a lot of time just painting up your little crates and barrels and tracks for mines and bookshelves and wizarding gear and mine carts, and the list goes on forever.
Yeah, the detail on them is great, and that's actually the hardest thing about them, is that, well, at first glance, they don't look too detailed. When you look at these ones like the pile of provisions in the food cart, or the fact that the bookshelves have individual books of different sizes, if you just want to blast this with color and be done with it, you can finish these in 2 minutes. Like, one of the things that I've started doing with these ones as well is the Citadel contrast paints are awesome. And I do find it is handy to hit these with primer. You don't need to prime them or base coat them, but I find that the paint stays on them better if you do. So what I've done with painting mine up is I've used the Citadel Xandri Dust spray and then hit them with Citadel Wildwood contrast paint. And it's done. Like, it's so fast to do a bunch of the basic furniture pieces, and then you can pick out the metal details, and at that point, you don't even need to do a wash. It's really, really fast to do a bunch of these. The problem is that you end up doing a ton of them in a single day, and before you know it, it's 3 a.m., and you're painting small details of pages of scrolls at 3 a.m., wondering what's happened to your life.
The thing that we love about the terrain crates is we tend to use a lot of tabletop boards when we're playing in person. We specifically definitely use a lot of Dwarven Forge. Now, Dwarven Forge tends to focus on the bigger pieces, creating epic dungeons or forests or towns and cities and castles. But to really bring the detail and bring those elements to life, filling them with little things like crates and barrels and tracks and bookshelves is really adding a new element that when you look down at the game table that you're going to be playing on, it suddenly feels much more alive, like it's been a lived-in space. And that is invaluable. When I add just these small elements to a game table and my players walk in and see it, I can see them walking up to the table and picking up these little pieces, even a haystack, and examining it. And I can see the admiration that comes with a well set up table just by adding in 10 to 15 little pieces from a terrain crate. So by buying a few of these boxes that really speak to the setting that you're trying to create, you just create a much more lively setting that is going to really, really add a lot for a little to your game.
Overall, the price of these sets is really, really good, with many of the sets being in the ballpark of $20 to $100, and the sculpt quality of them being so high. I've really found that they've found a nice place within all of the different miniature collecting that we've been doing. The sets are really focused around a theme, and they keep coming out with new themes and new sets. So whenever you want to kind of have that great set piece encounter and really add a lot of detail, it's really easy to get down to the game store or get on Mantic's website, get one of these things for like $20, paint them up in an afternoon, and have something awesome for your game table that night. And I think one of the cool things that I've always loved about using these little detail pieces is I kind of love the mystery that happens when you use them, because when you see the stack of books on the wizard's desk and you see that represented on the game board, you're like, I want to look at that as a player. These details make things pop because the player's like, oh, the dungeon master put that there for a reason. It must be important. And sometimes it's just dressing, but sometimes maybe in one of these books is a very powerful spell. So
I will also say that on that note, sometimes these will inspire a part of your campaign. You see the stack of books and you immediately start thinking about what those books might be and what value they could bring to your game. The other thing to note about the terrain crate pieces is sometimes people might look at them and say, oh, I'm not a painter, and therefore they might steer away from them. The great thing about these is that if you're not a painter, they are the easiest thing to paint. They take no talent. Whether you're an avid painter or just getting started or are just showing an interest in painting, this is actually an excellent place to start. You don't have to worry about the fine details of painting up your favorite heroes or villains. Instead, you get to paint a stack of crates, which you're just going to need some nice wooden colors and a dry brush. And even if you mess up a little bit, it's just a wooden crate, so it's still going to look good. So it's a really relaxed way of getting into painting.
I totally find that even for me, when it's been a couple weeks or months since I painted, I'll usually start with one of these, again, to warm myself back up again. Right? Like, just, it's like, you know what? I really want to just make sure that I can nail this dry brushing, or that I can really make sure that I remember, test the thickness of a wash. And because their price is ultimately, like, these pieces are 50 cents each within the context of the whole box, you don't feel bad if you mess it up. You can just repaint it. It's just terrain. It's not like you've messed up the fine details of a character's face or anything like that. So if you are someone that is just getting into miniature painting for the first time, I do recommend trying this because it's a great way to master the fundamentals of base coating, washing, and dry brushing without the pressure of being like, oh, I just messed up this entire miniature and now I gotta try again because I messed up my character. You didn't mess up your character, you messed up that bookshelf. It's fine.
So make sure to check out Mantic Games and their terrain crates. We'll have the links in the description below.
Yeah, and we've created tons of great setups in our games of Dungeons & Dragons using things like Terrain Crate and Dwarven Forge and much, much more. You can often find some of these awesome setups in our Dungeons of Drakkenheim series, but you can also check us out on Twitter and Instagram. We post photos of these setups all the time. So if you're looking for some great inspiration or you created something that you find inspiring, tag us, show us. We'd love to see it.
So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time in the dungeon.